Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. This is the day after where we talk about two, maybe a few more micro, really focused subjects from the previous day's game before launching into some larger conversations about the rest of college football, the SEC. But we got Paul Wadlington, we got Justin Wells. I'm Joe Cook. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also if you have not yet, we had a bunch of post-game analysis. We had stuff at the whistle yesterday. We've got more stuff up today. Paul will have his post-mortems coming about a great 31-12 win. So make sure you head to InsideTexas.com. Now is a great time to join as the Longhorns have moved up to number 2 in the AP poll. But Paul, we're going to talk a little bit about two focused subjects today, and one of them is third down conversions. And when you think about the idea that Texas had 10 for 16 on third down conversions, that's great news. That's awesome. But they had 16 third downs, and I'm looking at the stats. Their average distance to go, 7.8 yards. They converted 63%, obviously. They were 2 for 5 on third and longs, 4 for 4 on third and 4 or shorter. And also the average yards gained on these third downs was 6.2. Really good passing, 13.5 yards per attempt, which, as we know, is astronomical. But I guess it's one of those things. Are you happy that Texas converted that many third downs? Or are you like, why is Texas in so many third downs?
No, I want to fail on our third down so that the offense learns a lesson to be better on first and second. I think we need to lose that game. That's the only way you learn is in defeat.
I mean, they seem to have learned some of the lessons pretty well. But seriously though, I mean, like,
let's just talk about the game, guys. Like, what are we doing? Come on.
Well, we're trying to figure out, like, well, Quinn, obviously from the very first series, Quinn Ewers had to be there on third down, and a lot of that's a testament to what Michigan was able to do on defense, a very stout unit. But at the same time, like, I feel like that shows that Texas is able to just drop back pass without play action, with trusting Quinn Ewers and trusting receivers to get open. And Justin, I feel like we saw that on the very first series.
That's exactly what happened. You were going to get Michigan's best early, obviously. 23-game home winning streak. That's what they were used to. But that's how you demoralize a really good defense, especially up front, is not big plays, big chunk plays. It's methodical. And you don't necessarily think about that with Sark a lot of the times. You think of those big plays, the playmakers they have, all the speed they have on the outside. But Texas went at them, and it took a little bit, but it took some third down conversions. And let me tell you, there's nothing that knocks down a defense more than converting. I think they had 3 consecutive on the very first drive alone. And if you don't take away the touchdown, this thing is more of a blowout than it already was. I think that third down success is huge because that's the down for defenders to tell them they got to get off the field. Michigan couldn't get off the field in the first half. They really couldn't do it much in the second half either, but it was a lot more prevalent in the first. That's how you knock out a team on the road, guys. That's how you demoralize a stadium, consistently converting. And Quinn Ewers did a really good job keeping his eyes down the field because he was having to move a little bit. Wink was throwing some blitzes at him every once in a while, and him throwing on the run, to me, Quinn, that's the best I've seen him look out of the pocket moving around. Before, we had kind of seen him stutter step a little bit, or maybe pump fake a little bit too much, or maybe overthink a half a second too soon. There was no overthinking in this game. Quinn was so dialed in. Sark was in his bag with these play calls, and I'm telling you, converting all these third downs, 6 in the first half, that takes a stadium and a defense completely out of a game.
Paul, I know you were watching it from the base, so Texas Beats wishes you had made it to the mitten and were watching it.
Wait a minute. How did he know his nickname? Because that's something I have not told. I don't even know who Texas Beats is.
That's between us, Justin.
Email? Okay.
Yeah, that's between us. I don't know. I don't know how it got out.
Somebody's messing with my phone.
I mean, I have it stenciled on a sweatshirt. Do you think someone might have read it?
Damn it.
Yeah.
Me and my kids.
from the pleasure here in Galveston, spray painted.
That's right. The one thing that I thought was probably the best about the third down conversions, other than Quinn's maneuver and navigation in the pocket, which was fantastic, was 4 of 4 on third and short. And we did that running the ball. We ran the ball on Michigan enough. You even take out the 55-yard reverse to Wingo, which was amazing. Great call and a real showcase of Wingo's speed. We ran the ball. I mean, we ran it in the red zone. Jarrett Gibson was fantastic in the red zone. Scored on a counter where he timed it up perfectly. And then he gets north-south immediately, more than any runner on this team. And
yes,
I think we're going to see an expanded role for Jarrett Gibson as he gets more comfortable in the offense. He doesn't know every package. That's pretty obvious. Some of our running backs don't know every package. That was also obvious. They went the wrong way on 2 different plays, one of them in the red zone, which got Quinn hit and started a little fight, which I was glad to see.
Some fire from that O-line.
Finally, I mean, I'm so tired of watching Texas O-line mill around like zoo animals while their quarterback gets punked. And
amen.
I mean, I've watched that, and these guys won't put up with it. And the message sent there is not just jawing and standing up for your quarterback. It's, hey, you do that again. Hey man, I'm going to post you up, and this guy's going to dive into the side of your knee.
And that was to Kenneth Grant too. Like
I'm being serious. Like,
I know you are. That's why I love you.
Like there's a personal foul. Hey, that happens. You hit our quarterback late. Hey, if you start to make a point of doing this and you keep doing it, we're going to end your year. Like, we don't care. We'll take the penalty. I'm going to post you up, and this dude's going to drive his helmet to the side of your knee. So if you want to keep it up, but we're not going to do this like turn the other cheek BS.
Yeah, and I mean, I asked Sark about that in the post-game press conference yesterday, and it was basically like, hey, Hudson Card had to help himself off the dirt at Arkansas with Christian Jones looking there. And now you've got Jake Majors and DJ Campbell getting personal foul penalties. Like, that's a great thing to see, obviously, if you're
DJ has that type of disposition, Joe. DJ's that type of guy. You bump into him off the field, piss him off, that's kind of who you get. Kelvin's kind of a passive, but still a big-time kid. DJ's the one that will throw hands with you in an alley.
And I want to be like, well, he was in it, or he was – no, it was all 5. Like, all 5 of them were
Connor
right
got there first.
With Kenneth Grant diving in and doing that. So that was good to see. Paul, one thing about decisiveness, even in the – I guess you could call the failures, there was decisiveness. Because there were a couple times when Quinn Ewers – I think a year ago, he's like, okay, he's covered. Okay, he's covered. I can maybe make this throw. And he would try and get picked off. On Saturday, there were some balls he just grounded, like right away, at a guy, took it. I think a couple of them were, there's one he just threw it basically at Wisner on the ground. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's the way you live to fight another day. And I think that's some of as we saw so many signs of maturity from this team and from Ewers himself, that was one of the biggest ones, I feel like, is just his willingness to throw it into the ground. Justin, one last thing on third down before we move on. Michigan, 1 of 5 on third and long, 1 of 4 on third and shorts, 3 of 12 on the day. Just not an area where they were going to succeed, because once that game got to 14-3, the script that Michigan wanted to play the game on was up in smoke, and they had to start doing things that Davis Warren wasn't comfortable with, and Texas punished them for it.
Yeah, I think wasn't the second drive of the game. They ran a flea flicker. They ran a couple plays that you thought, okay, you're diving into your bag really early to try to generate any sort of momentum on offense, because it was going to be a long day. I don't think we expected Michigan's offense to be great, to score a ton of points. All of us had predictions relatively low in scores. But I think you got to give a lot of credit to Texas, too. I think they were prepared. I think that front was prepared. They were fresh. They ran a lot of D linemen in and out off the field. A lot of guys saw the field yesterday. We saw a lot of guys, backups, playing a ton as well. I saw a lot of Jelani McDonald. I saw a lot of guys that you weren't so much used to. And then you had the Andrew Makuba come out, the breakout game for him as well. And I think that was – we had talked about that was a potential thing as well. And so it's one of those things when we talked about last week. All three phases of the game, you have to give Texas. They literally, even with Burt's miss early on, I felt like they controlled the line of scrimmage at all three phases. I felt like they controlled it on offense. They controlled it on defense. Linebacker play was good. It was good. I mean, hell, Leona LaFau almost got a targeting foul for shooting a gap, for playing sound football. It was at that point. But the only thing that got me was the flags. I mean, it was almost like it should have killed some of Texas' momentum and tempo, but it didn't. Somehow, some way, this looked like a bunch of guys that went into Tuscaloosa last year and knocked off Nick Saban by double digits. That's the same group that showed up on Saturday in Ann Arbor. They were ready. They were prepared. And Sark had those guys dialed in. And Michigan they are who they are. They have an incredible tight end. They've got some inexperience at quarterback. The running back is hit and miss. The O-line was solid. I felt they were a little incohesive, which is something Paul talked about during the week, that, hey, these guys aren't really gelling like Michigan guys gel. And I think that's why you saw Texas control the line of scrimmage on both sides.
Excited for that one. One thing, you mentioned it, 7 penalties for Texas, 45 yards, 4 were on Cam Williams. It's his first road start. And after he lost his mind on a drive, he was fine. And penalties are penalties, but he recovered. He bounced back.
And that hold, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
That was a tough one. Thank you to Brett Nelson. AP poll came out. Texas is number 2. Georgia, number 1. This was a pretty close margin last week. Texas had first place votes last week. I think Ohio State still has more. But this may continue. Well, I bet we see that flip a little bit back and forth as Ohio State racks up wins. Texas plays some unimpressive opponents. But, I'm excited. I don't know if there's been a 1-2 in Austin maybe since
2006. 2006, Texas, Ohio State. I was there. That's where I met LeBron James.
Met LeBron James?
Well, I saw him.
I hear that. Before we keep on going, I'm going to talk about some 5-star freshmen. Want to get in a word from our sponsor. And with that, we'll throw it to LC.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Thank you, LC. Thank you to Andre. Guys, 2 5-star freshmen for the Longhorns made some big impacts. Ryan Wingo, obviously someone who is in Texas rotation at wide receiver, that's 6 deep, maybe even 7 deep rotation. And then Colin Simmons, be it in the pass rush package in some regular rotational snaps. He earned his first sack. But Paul, I think you may have noticed this, that play to Wingo looked a whole lot like the one that Xavier Worthy used on Thursday for the Chiefs.
Yeah, some similarities to that end around for sure. That's becoming an increasingly common play that you're seeing, and I'm seeing the NFL. They run it right outside of the red zone, like around between the 20 and 35 yard line.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's kind of becoming an NFL thing of like a misdirection thing, and you're trying to get the corner and you're trying to get in basically a score before you get into the red zone and things tighten up. And you're typically getting softer defense because they're worried about you trying to throw it in.
Right.
So anyway, it's kind of interesting. We did it from around midfield. I guess around our 40, and Wingo got 55 yards on it. Well blocked, but you really saw that he had some serious speed and some acceleration. He's just an impressive guy. I thought we might see him involved in the passing game. I think Steve Sarkisian, for good reason, said, hey, let's take the more experienced guys and keep the focus on them in the passing game for executional purposes. Let's not have an own goal here, because if we play a clean game, Michigan can't beat us. I mean, that was clear at halftime, right? It's 24-3. You've completely dominated. You're on offense. You're on pace for 500 yards. Texas just said, hey, like if we don't fumble multiple kickoffs and punts in our territory, Michigan can't beat us. And I know people don't like it, but Sark did take his foot off the accelerator, and he did say, hey, I'm not showing anymore. Like, let's just go advance. Let's move on. And by the way, Michigan was okay with that because if you notice, they were waiting till 2-3 seconds on the shot on the play clock for most of the second half until that last drive against the second teamers, the charity drive. I know that pissed people off. I know Homer didn't like it, but I think we do have to realize that this is a new Texas defense, and we're not having 30-point Kansas State second half comebacks anymore. Like that's not going to be a thing when your secondary is coherent, cohesive. You've got Makuba and Taft dialed in. They trusted Jelani McDonald. They played him a ton at nickel. That was for setting the edge. They wanted a bigger nickel out there who could still cover but can run up and thump. Obviously, we saw the young freshman or sophomore now, true sophomore, Derek Williams make a play. He's okay. And then Barron and Muhammad just locked Michigan's receivers down. Those guys were Jags, and they were balling. They just completely locked them down, and every completion they had on them was either a flea flicker or Davis Warren actually making an incredible throw as Michael Taft lit him up. Falling back, he made a great throw, but that was it. If your offense is predicated on that, it's not going to happen. Michigan's not going to score or threaten us.
And a little bit what Paul was talking about at wide receiver, that was one of the first things, we all have buddies and friends that text us and call us after games. And one of the first things I kept getting asked was, why didn't Ryan Wingo get more targets and Jonte Cook get more targets? Are they in the doghouse? Guys, I feel like I'm going to get these conversations every Saturday afternoon all season long. There are 6 legitimate threats at wide receiver. The way Sark is going to balance this out is you got to trust him. Not to mention Gunnar Helm was the key guy in that first half, and it was the middle of the field was open. Sark was going to take what Michigan gave him, and so I think we're going to see more Wingo in the next 2 weeks. I think we're going to see more Jonte Cook in the next 2 weeks. These next 2 weeks are going to be games where Jaden Blue needs about 8 carries and then get you a juice box. Isaiah Vaughn, run few drives, go get you a juice box too, because this is where they did what they needed to do. And I agree completely with what Paul said. Don't try to do too much. Play within yourself. Make sure the experienced guys understand what they're doing. But buddy, that Wingo burst, man, that looked good. And Colin Simmons, it wasn't just the sack. It was the almost sacks that really got my attention. He didn't come one play. He didn't come 2. He came every play. And that kid right there, he was smelling blood like a shark.
Yeah, it was good to see him get a sack. And I think the amount of trust that the Texas coaches have in him is already evident. They trust the athleticism, obviously. Like, you're not a 5-star defensive end for nothing. But they trust him as a football player. This is not just put your hand in the dirt and go. Like, there's some nuance to that position. I think he showed a little bit more of it last week against Colorado State, where he made a real nice pass breakup, I think on a 3rd or 4th down. But just to show that tenacity, show that athleticism, get after the quarterback, record his first sack, I was really, really impressed to see from Colin Simmons. And we'll probably see more of that. One thing just about that position, I don't think Trey Moore, Paul, has made much of an impact in the stat sheet quite yet, but I don't view that as a cause for concern because I've seen him impact plays. I'm curious if your read on it's the same.
Yeah, he played extremely well. He was the second away from making some really big plays. He had a big hit pressure on Davis Warren. That was a reason for their a lack of a 3rd down conversion. He actually was tough against the run as well. He held the edge. So, yeah, I love what I'm seeing from Trey Moore. It's just a matter of time. And, you're going to be a little run first against Michigan, particularly early in the game, because you don't think Davis Warren and the receivers can hurt us. That's the proper disposition. That's the proper game plan. So we'll play some teams where it's going to be pass first, and you'll see some Colin Simmons, Trey Moore packages featured with a dime behind it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all. He played very well. He had several pressures, and he's tough against the run. He's not just a pass rushing show pony.
Going to get a chance to face his former team on Saturday, which should be a little interesting.
What's left of it?
Yeah.
What was the score on that UTSA Texas?
49-10. It was 35-3 at halftime. And GJ Kinney kind of let the foot off the gas for his old coach to be like respectful.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I may try to get to San Marcos on Thursday. Go see Texas State and Arizona State. That is going to be a battle. Got one from Texas Beats. No disrespect. Remember when Brockermeyer was playing linebacker for us? This is a wildly different team. I think spot on with that one. Without a doubt, this is a team that's got a lot of quality linebackers. And, you got the 6-year guy in Benda who was throwing his weight around. Anthony Hill, I think, Paul, you noted he makes mistakes, but he makes them real fast, and they're becoming fewer and fewer and more far between.
All right, we have a confessional in the chat, Joe. I don't think you saw it. UT parking. Y'all tell Eric and Aline that I was wrong about Mookie Taft. He's a stud.
Hey, I respect Nickel as a coverage for that. I really do. I love that because we have been saying this for 2 years. Trust me, we didn't know what to expect coming out of a preferred walk-on committed to Rice out of Westlake. People at Westlake didn't know what to expect from Michael Taft. That kid has a heart the size of the state of Texas, prepares like nobody on that roster. Hey, tip your cap to Mookie. That kid is not going anywhere.
Hey, I want to talk about him and Makuba, particularly. Justin, hat tip to you for mentioning that gentleman's name in our pregame. Makuba was fantastic. Taft was great. They really played several safeties, but those were the kind of the guys they had dialed in key moments. And they snuff things out before they get started. They just go and anticipate stuff. We had a couple of busts that Warren couldn't convert on, but it didn't look anything like last year. Like we've really crossed an important bridge in terms of our secondary, in terms of team IQ, in terms of their ability to just kind of talk and communicate with each other. It's really big. And Makuba and Taft, I brought up, hey, we're not big at safety. They're really dialed in. They're sharp guys. They're good in pass coverage. They're good at anticipation. Are they going to be able to tackle against a bigger, more physical running back like Mullings? Yeah, just fine. No problems at all. And Makuba made several excellent plays. So I think it's really exciting to see the personnel, but more importantly, how much smarter we're playing. We're just a much cleaner football team on defense.
One of the things is he started last week, and I know that when you're playing safety at Texas, you're rotating a lot, but he was replaced by Derek Williams. Didn't let it affect his play at all. I mean, he was the guy that got the first turnover. So
didn't Barron say something about that after the game, Joe?
I think he mentioned it.
Kuba was not happy before the game. He was told he wasn't starting. He was not happy before the game. Barron goes right to him and goes, forget it. You're going to be on the field, and when you're on the field, you're going to make a play. You're actually going to make some plays and help us win this game. That's leadership we're not even talking about that I feel like is the underbelly of this program. And that was right before the game. Makuba has his breakout game 30 minutes before. He was pissed off that he wasn't starting. But Barron goes over there, talks to him, says, hey, you're going to get in, and when you do, you're going to help us win this game. Guys, that's a multiplier right there. That's huge.
Maybe Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon don't need to leave an hour radius to get all their defensive backs with all the quality Austin players who have done good for the Longhorns this season. With that, we'll move it on to college football news and notes. SEC's play started this week. South Carolina went to Kentucky, and I think maybe in the most surprising result of the entire SEC slate, like there were some things that occurred on the field that were surprising, but some of the final scores for the most part weren't. I did not expect South Carolina to walk into Lexington with the team that they have and just thump Kentucky like the way they did. 31-6. Lenora Sellers had 2 touchdowns, but just controlled the game, controlled the second half. South Carolina looked way better, obviously, than what they did in week 1. But Kentucky, that's a team I thought was going to be someone that Texas would have to watch out for. They like to do a lot of things offensively within reason that Sark likes to do, between trying to establish run with Bush Habden, some Boise to it, some Sark to it. Couldn't do anything. Brock Vandegrift couldn't do anything. And so now Kentucky, Justin, they're already in the hole in SEC play, and South Carolina probably looks a little better than they thought they would coming out of last week.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that as well. I thought Kentucky was kind of the trap game. That's the one I circled because they always have great athletes there, and they always have guys on defense that play in the NFL. Just look at the rosters in the NFL. Kentucky's surprisingly strong there. But Shane Beamer, they talked to him at halftime, and I think Beamer was as surprised by the outcome of the first half as Kentucky and South Carolina, the teams were. You can kind of tell he's like, yeah, I'm enjoying this. This is a good day so far. I think he was pleasantly surprised, and that's the beauty of the season playing out. We can make predictions for 9 months, but we really don't know how it's going to transpire until they get on the field. I got to tell you, South Carolina looks salty. They look strong. They definitely look better in the SEC than that other new team in the SEC up north in Norman.
Paul, any big takeaways from that game aside from just looking at the horrid nature of the stats? Just Brock Vandegrift not even able to complete more than 40% of his passes, gets pulled, I think. Just Kentucky getting dog walked by the Gamecocks. And that leads to South Carolina, of all places, hosting game day. So any thoughts on that one, or you got some other games, maybe one from north of the Red River you want to look at?
Kentucky, South Carolina was the most shocking result on Saturday for me. South Carolina should not have beaten Old Dominion last week. And they looked horrific. Their defense is pretty good. Their offense is not very good, but Kentucky, Brock Vandegrift is terrible. And, they've got probably 6 or 7 NFL guys starting for Kentucky. And they look like a team that Stoops and his little flirtation with A&M, I wonder if that had some effects in the locker room. I don't know, but it's kind of like your wife runs off with a tennis instructor, and then she figures out that he's a loser and a drug addict and he's poor. And then she comes back 2 days later and she's like, "Hey, honey, I love you. I missed you." And you're supposed to be like, "Oh, welcome back." I kind of wonder if that's how Kentucky feels about Stoops when if you believe the internet's always right. He was on an airplane headed down to do a press conference to announce that job. So I don't know what happened there. I know Brock Vandegrift is not good. That was my big question because I just looked at the talent on the Kentucky roster and where it is. And I said, all right, well, if they have an above average quarterback, they're going to be pretty good.
Right.
And they do not have an above average quarterback, and they don't seem to be all on the same page. So that's crazy. That was a crazy result. Arkansas, Oklahoma State, I'm hearing people reading people bagging on them. I wouldn't put them in the category of the other teams we're going to play.
No, that was a wild game.
They actually outplayed Oklahoma State for most of that game and then just shot themselves in the foot. They're improved, and Bobby Petrino is going to be good for them on offense. I still think we'll handle them, but they've got some – I think they actually came up with some confidence from that game, believe it or not. OU, oh God.
That's worth its own discussion, and it's all on offense. But one quick thing on Arkansas, I think we've learned based off that game, there are 2 players that you really need to watch out for, and it's Taylor Green, who had 45 pass attempts and 18 rushes, and Jaquindon Jackson. If you can figure out that dynamic, I don't know if there's another player on that roster, at least on that offense.
Joe, you got 2 quarterbacks in high school. That one's that played some quarterback in college. The other one is playing quarterback in college, but they're essentially big running backs, both from DFW. Taylor Green from Louisville, Jaquindon obviously from Duncanville. You're exactly right. That's who Arkansas is. Lance Jackson, the 2025 commit from Pleasant Grove, he was actually at that game, and I was talking to him as he was leaving because he needed a Michigan-Texas updates. He had no idea. His phone exploded when he got out of the stadium in Stillwater because he had no clue what was going on in Ann Arbor. And so I was catching him up. He was talking about that OSU-Arkansas game. He said it was a good game. He said Arkansas just kind of made a few mistakes late. But yeah, you're right. Taylor Green and Jaquindon Jackson, both high school quarterbacks that probably should be college running backs. At least one of them still is. That's their MO.
Paul, you talked about teams who put in prep for Texas whenever they can, at least in the Big 12. You think Arkansas and Sam Pittman, of all people, in his dire contractual state, may do stuff like that as well?
Yeah, we know Arkansas will certainly do that. OU, obviously famous for doing that. In the SEC, I think that's going to come to bite them. They may come to bite them next week against Tulane. So we'll see. I just think their offense is really flaccid. They don't have any juice. Their offensive line has got major issues, and their receivers, they're not like Michigan Jag level, but they're not super threatening other than Deion Burks, and they're struggling to get him the ball in space. So that's going to be very interesting. And I'm feeling pretty good about our secondary, because that's always my concern the last 3 years going against OU, frankly, because they do different looks, they show you different things, they're gonna unveil plays they haven't run before, and our secondary was always 2 steps behind and trying to figure stuff out. And I don't feel like that's going to be the case. And then defensively, I think OU's pretty good, but it's hard to bear the weight of your offense every down after down after down. And after what Sark did to Michigan, I think there's a lot of defenses on notice.
I don't think that anybody is going to. I'm with you on the Deion Burks part. Like that's a guy who, on any team, you have to watch out for. But when you think about their other receivers, and that tight end's pretty solid too. Bauer Sharp seems to be something that they can use. But their other receivers, I think one is like 5'7", and although he's cat quick and can get away from you in space in that offense, he's still 5'7". Like, he can be kind of physical at the line. Brennan Thompson, who did have a touchdown reception, kind of same way. I think he did. Yeah, he had a touchdown reception. So like there's not a lot of size on that offense, especially if Nick Anderson stays hurt. And there's not a lot of size on that offensive line. Like I was trying to go through Sooner Scoop to see what their impression was, and boy, it was negative. And they felt like it was you laid it at everybody's feet. A lot of people were looking at Jackson Arnold. A lot of people were looking at Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley. A lot of people were looking at the O-line. But from what our buddy George Stoya was talking about, there wasn't anything going the Sooners' way on offense. And this is also against a Houston team that got pilfered in the portal. Like, they are – I know that man, I was watching this.
Any all-conference guy team they had last year left. Yeah.
I forget the name of the head coach at Houston now who replaced Dana, but he's a builder.
Willie Fritz.
He is. He's a builder, and he's not a quick builder. He is a slow builder. And that team still, I mean, granted, not a whole lot as far as scoring. I think just 1 touchdown and 2 field goals. But that team still was able to take it to Houston, take it to Oklahoma and make it tough.
I learned last Friday that Willie Fritz started coaching under Josh Gibson's dad. Josh Gibson, the head football coach at Pleasant Grove High School in Texarkana. Willie Fritz started coaching special teams under Josh Gibson's dad. I learned that last Friday. Just a little nugget.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know who the coach in Texarkana was. I'm glad you clarified that. I thought you were talking about the great Negro League baseball player who was like the Black Babe Ruth. I was like, dude, that's sweet. Hey, speaking of our enemies failing, Texas Tech got their ass beat by Washington State, which was hilarious. And
that team is bad.
Micah Hudson, though, got a catch for 4 yards.
He did catch the ball? Because I didn't see him. All I saw was Josh Kelly. They've got a pretty good receiver in Josh Kelly.
Well, what's funny is Josh Kelly was Washington State's number 1 receiver, transferred to Tech, goes back to Palouse, and they got blown out. And of course, like every school, random school, Washington State, they've got a Texas high school quarterback, a guy from Little Elm, who is basically like a dual threat air raid guy. He rushed for almost 200 yards against Tech. And it's just all these Texas high school quarterbacks. They show up in all these random places because people just come down here to get the 3 stars that are abundant. The Brandon Fowler Nicolosis and this guy John. I can't remember his last name, but he's a good player. He's insane, but he's a good player. And Tech got destroyed. The game was not competitive. They didn't get edged out. They got pummeled. So if you're
what
holding
is Tech's identity? What I don't know what they do on offense or defense.
It's a team of fakes. Joey McGuire built a lot of goodwill based on his high school achievements, and then he is very friendly to the press. He is extremely friendly to the press. So he built up a bunch of, and if you're nice to the press as a football coach, they're all lapdogs and they're all super. Oh, the coach looked me in the eye and answered my question and was nice to me and.
Real relationships.
Yes. And so they think that the coach is their girlfriend, and they'll write up all these articles talking about how he's transforming Tech football. And then JV Joey talks a huge game, particularly to his alums, right? Behind closed doors and even publicly. And then it's all just fake. It's not built on anything real, and it's falling apart. So props to them.
Obviously, the biggest upset yesterday was Northern Illinois, now ranked Northern Illinois, topping the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in South Bend. I think I watched this from Scorecards in Ann Arbor, which if you've ever been to Cheers in downtown Austin, it's pretty much the exact same place. But how does Marcus Freeman let this happen again, Justin?
Buddy, I didn't watch it, but remember we talked about it after the A&M game. I still feel like their defense is really good, especially their secondary. I felt like was elite, and they had a pretty good defensive front. But the offense, there's just no weapons. They have 2 good running backs, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price out of Denison High School in Texas. I love that kid. Outside of that, name an athlete that runs under a 4.6 in South Bend, because they don't exist. Their most dynamic punt returner, kick returner is Jaden Greathouse. And I love Jaden. He's not dynamic. So that's kind of what they've done. And Riley Leonard is a great, I think, game manager, but he's not going to do anything different that's going to win a game. He was the same way at Duke. So, buddy, the Notre Dame crowd, when the Irish jogged off, rough, rowdy. I can't explain what happened. Northern Illinois is probably a better team than we anticipated. I didn't know they were going to be like that, but I think Notre Dame kind of showed their stripes a little more this Saturday than they did in College Station last Saturday.
Paul, they hired a new offensive coordinator, one that led or helped Jaden Daniels to the Heisman and Mike Denbrock, to try to make sure this doesn't happen. And it's happened with Marshall a couple years ago. I think there's one more where they faltered, and then this. And this is a type of loss, even in a 12-team playoff, that this one could knock them out. And I'm just, trying to figure out why Marcus Freeman doesn't get it. But also, maybe if you have any insight on this, what does this say about their week 1 result in College Station?
Yeah, what does it say about the Aggies? Yeah, Marcus Freeman also lost to Stanford.
That was it.
I think they were a 2-10 Stanford team, something like that, 3-9. Yeah, Freeman's got issues. This was very on brand, a very big public win. Everyone's excited, and then you go lose to Northern Illinois, which is kind of a mid-tier MAC team. This isn't like, Ben Roethlisberger back in the day at, playing in the MAC. Yeah, it's not the Randy Moss Marshall teams with Chad Pennington. Like, this is just a mid-tier MAC team that played really hard. And Freeman's got issues. As far as the playoff, to me, that's disqualifying. I don't care if they went out. It's disqualifying. You can't say that you're a playoff team with that weak schedule and lose that game. I don't care if they eke out a bunch of other games and they have schedule luck and opposing teams have hurt quarterbacks or whatever. To me, that's disqualifying. I don't think they're a playoff team. And then what does it say about the Aggies? Well, we're operating off of limited data points this early in this college football season. Yeah. And we don't know yet, but it does not speak well. And I think, I'm pretty sure we're going to play a different quarterback when we go to College Station. The question is whether it's Marcel Reed or maybe Jalen Henderson. I think it'll be probably Marcel Reed. Wegman is, talk about on brand, light up McNeese State, stink it up against a real defense. So I just have no confidence in that quarterback. And A&M, not to get back to the Michigan thing, but their receivers are not dynamic. They can't separate. They're not bad. They're big bodies. So if you had a really good, really accurate, decisive quarterback, you can hit people in a high precision passing game for 15, 18, 12, 11, right? A lot of like our old, one of the years with Tom Herman with Ellinger when we had the big receivers, right?
With Colin and Lil Jordan, and then
you weren't going to hit stuff downfield, but if you
they've got Lucian, they've got Nate Thomas, they've got some of those bigger guys,
but they can't separate. So you better throw perfect balls, and you better have good plays drawn up, and you better have good hands. You better catch it with a guy on you, and A&M doesn't have that. So they're not projecting well. They go to Florida this Saturday. Talk about a desperation game. I mean, every game Florida plays is desperation. But Elko, we're going to see the honeymoon end if the Florida Gators beat A&M in Gainesville.
Ooh, buddy.
And they're going to face DJ Lagway.
And not to mention Northern Illinois got $1.4 million payout to come beat Notre Dame, buddy. That's a good day for those guys.
That's always sweet when the mid-major gets paid to come beat and upset somebody. It's pretty.
Can we get that check? Yeah, just go to the front office at the beginning of the stadium as you walk out. She'll have the check ready for you. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you guys. We'll be back soon.
It's like that scene in Happy Gilmore. Well, I want to check. He gets 36th place, but he still wants the giant check.
He wants a giant check.
Anything from? I'm trying to look through the SEC. There are a lot of snoozers. Georgia beat the heck out of Tennessee Tech. Ole Miss beat Middle Tennessee. Missouri beat Buffalo. Let's see. LSU pulled away from Nichols, as mentioned. A&M beat McNeese. Cal beating Auburn. I think it kind of feels like Auburn thought that they bought enough talent around Peyton Thorne to make it so Peyton Thorne's not a problem. And you got to give Justin Wilcox and that crew some credit. But
Sterling Gilbert.
I think Peyton Thorne may still be a problem over there, Paul.
Yeah, looks like, I think, unless I'm mistaken, he threw 4 picks.
Yeah,
that's a problem. It's hard to win games when your quarterback gives it away 4 times. So, that's amazing to me, because that was almost as stunning as Kentucky getting goose-egged at home by South Carolina, because Auburn had this big buildup. They're landing incredible recruiting classes. They had some impact freshmen. They hit the portal pretty hard, and they're at home. And it's Auburn. It's Cal. And it's Auburn. There's nothing else to do there. Everyone's there. It's a very underrated stadium in terms of crowd noise and everything.
Paul, did you go the year Texas played Cal back in 2016?
Yeah.
I was there too. Beautiful scenery, beautiful campus, beautiful stadium.
They can get up, but it's not like Jordan. Yeah. Jordan Hare's got, I think, 86,000 or something like that. It is no slouch. And
I think they're just going to up the NIL to KJ Lacey. That's just my opinion. They're going to keep coming at KJ, and they're going to go, okay, we got a new number for you. Don't watch last Saturday, but we got a new number.
Well, I'll say this about the SEC. When other fan bases would see that and throw their hands up and say, forget this program. I'm not watching. Don't call me about another dime. SEC fans, when their program struggles, they go, we got to raise more.
Yeah.
So that's what differentiates the SEC from so many other conferences. They don't, when they're screwing up, their fans don't disassociate. They go, let's fire the coach and let's raise more money. So
pass the plate.
Yeah.
Pass the plate.
You know who is a great evidence of that? Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. They got rid of him. They turned themselves in. In order to fire him and save money on him. Looking through it, Arizona State, 30-23 over Mississippi State in the desert. I think that's a good win.
Quick on Arizona State. Tatum, Texas, East Texas bred. Drennan Fight had the big man touchdown of the day on Saturday. Did you see that score?
I'm looking at it right now.
He was
Picks
able
up
to
the
get
fumble.
that scoop, and he had that big old boy was able to gauge it over that. I didn't even know he scored at first. And then you watch it, and the ref's like, he crossed the plane. Excellent play from Mr. Big Drennan Fight. Give that man from Beast, Texas some love.
Let's see. Florida took care of Samford. Vanderbilt, 55-0 over Alcorn State.
Pavia looked good, man.
They're gonna ride him as long as they can.
That's all SEC second team quarterback talking right there.
Once that's done, it's done. The two that I'm kind of noticing that I think we need to talk about before we get to UTSA at the very end, Tennessee and NC State. I've never been a believer in this NC State team, but I think when you're trying to draw the line of contender and non-contender in the SEC, Tennessee is definitely above that line, and they're showing it more and more with Iamaliva and a quality defensive line that might be one of the better ones in the conference. So that was a good win in Charlotte. Did either of you watch Todd Orlando give Jalen Milroe a lot of fits in Tuscaloosa? Either of you see that one?
No.
I saw a little bit of it. I saw a little, and I started to think, does South Florida just have Bama's number? Do they just know? Do they know the signals? Do they just know what's going on? Because it's the second consecutive year South Florida has given them hell. Look, it was a one-possession game late in the fourth quarter. And if Ryan Williams doesn't, the 16-year-old college freshman who skipped, I believe, his senior year, doesn't miss out, that kid, if he doesn't score on that big play, that's another barn burner like last year. Maybe South Florida's really got their own Connor Stallions or something. They had their number for the most part. Jamari Miller also looked good.
That coach at South Florida is kind of becoming a G5 darling of sort, which is odd that he would get Todd Orlando with them. And apparently their real good quarterback is Byron Brown. Didn't have a good game, 15 of 35, 103. Golly, that's terrible. But it's that all happened when they renamed the playing surface Saban Field as well. So it was in question for 3 quarters. Alabama pulled away, kind of leveraged things in the fourth quarter, 28-3, but the Bulls were giving it to the Crimson Tide in back-to-back seasons, and Alabama pulls away at the very end. And then next week, gentlemen, we've got Jeff Traylor making yet another return to Austin. Did not look good for him this past week, as we mentioned kind of at the top of the show, with guys like when you have to replace the best player on offense and defense and 2 probably best defensive players in program history in one offseason at UTSA, you're going to have some struggles. And that's why on the I-35 rivalry, Justin, G.J. Kinney, the student got the best of the teacher.
They did, and I got to be honest. Texas State's they're playing pretty well. We saw a glimpse of this last year, and I think they're just carrying it over this year. Kenny's found a sweet spot on offenses in Division I, and I think he's doing well. And it's only a matter of time before he takes the next job, the higher up job. I was very surprised at the margin, because UTSA generally doesn't get blown out ever. Like, they're usually competitive in games. Like, they'll lose to a better team, but they're usually in it for at least a half, maybe even 3/4. They usually play within themselves. I think we saw missing Frank Harris. I think we understood how valuable he was there. And Owen McCowan was the Manning Award, I think, Player of the Week last week at quarterback. And so I was surprised by that one, guys. I knew Texas State was gonna try to do a lot of stuff dynamic, but you don't see Jeff Traylor teams generally get blown out. And so I cannot imagine what that facility was like last night and this morning, knowing that group, knowing those coaches. But they're going to have them up for Texas. Like, you knock them all the way down like Texas State did, I promise you they're going to show up to Austin with a different mindset. It may not matter. Texas is pretty fantastic, but I think we're going to see at least a better showing, knowing those coaches and knowing that program.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, he doesn't know who his quarterback is yet. Like, that seems to be a decent
It should
problem.
be Owen McCowan.
Did he get hurt because they split reps pretty evenly in that game, or was that a result of how the game went?
He
I
either
think it's
got
how the
hurt
game
or
went.
you got benched. I'm not sure.
I think it's how the game went.
So that's not good. And this isn't, like we kind of mentioned, this isn't the same team that walked into Texas, had 3 Power 5 level wide receivers, had Frank Harris, I think, after maybe only 3/4 of his total surgeries.
A freshman, Trey Moore.
Yeah, Trey Moore,
Zachary
Rashad
Franklin.
Wisdom. There were some good players on that
That tight
UTSA
end that's
team
going to be in the WWE.
that have not made their way back. Before we get out of here, I do like this question from Alan Roker. How many losses knocks you out of the 12-team playoff? It depends. I think if you're in the SEC, it depends. But I'm gonna kind of take it out here. I'm gonna put it at 2.5. If you lose 3 conference games, but it's to like Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, although I don't know who plays all those teams, you may still make it. Like we talked about, Paul, before the season, how if Florida goes and wins 9 games somehow, like that's a great team considering the schedule they got. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. But I think the answer to this one is it depends on a number of factors, and it especially depends on what conference you're in, especially when you think of the human element of the CFP selection committee.
Yeah, because of the expansion of the conferences, all conferences now have asymmetrical scheduling. So Missouri and A&M have much easier conference schedules than Oklahoma and Georgia, right? Georgia goes to Austin, goes to Tuscaloosa, goes to Oxford. So not easy. So you have to look at it from that standpoint. Then you got to look at, there is going to be kind of an informal conference power rating. There's going to be formal ones, but there's also going to be informal ones that the committee has in their heads. Right now, the SEC looks collectively head and shoulders above the other conferences. The Big Ten might have 2 really good teams at the top, maybe just one, maybe none. We're going to find out. So it's going to be interesting too, of Big Ten team that's 10-2 versus SEC team with a really rugged schedule that went 9-3. I tend to reward who you played. If you got an asymmetrical schedule and you just lucked out, I don't find you to be an automatic, entrant. That's my point about Notre Dame. To me, that loss was disqualifying. They're not a playoff team. It's over for
Justin,
them.
you got to take care of something. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I
Go ahead,
you
Jeff.
off.
You got it.
Justin, you got to take care of something. You got an answer for this one?
No, Paul nailed it. Like I honestly, I don't think we really know. It's all going to be about what the schedule were. It's going to be fun this first year because I feel like each week there's going to be a new team or new discussion because results. And so, but Paul said it about Notre Dame. That really rang true to me. You get beat up by Northern Illinois at home, you're disqualified. It doesn't matter what you look like the rest of the season. That you're probably not going to be in. The best thing I thought about Saturday was after Texas won, watching all of these other schools lose just made, if you're a Texas fan, you should feel like, yeah, this is a playoff team. Yeah, watch the rest of these guys get dinged and knocked down. Just keep doing what Texas does week in and week out, and they should be able to slide right back into the playoff for the second consecutive year.
Paul, I got some more time if you do. Justin, I know you got to head out. Thank you for joining us. Paul, you want to go over any other college football things that you noticed?
No, unless we got a pressing answer in the chat, I think we can sign out with Mr. Wells.
I think there's a few chats I want to get to about just the overall team, just a couple from the game and a couple from our last topic. All the penalties to start the game put Texas in a constant 3rd and medium or 3rd and long. Can't imagine that'll be a recurring theme. I think, like I said, Cam Williams just had his first road start of his career, and 111,000 people were watching. So I think everybody involved knows that can't happen again. But the end result made it so it wasn't that bad of an issue, and he played well. They're going to give him a little bit of grace on that front. Curious from our buddy Brett Nelson. I'm going to guess this meant first overall pick. Do you think Quinn has first overall pick potential?
Well, here's the thing. We know quarterbacks get overdrafted because their value in the NFL is so extreme, right? It's very difficult to win the NFL without a quarterback. And so I think they get overdrafted. They get pushed up over players, I guess, vis-a-vis their quality at their position, right? They're still going to get – the quarterback's going to get the nod, right? it's a weak quarterback class. So
it's Carson Beck and Quinn and who else? You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a college quarterback, there's a lot of incentive. If you're a junior and you have a good year, there's a lot of incentive to come out with this class. So, yeah, he has the potential, and probably more than I would have answered this in the summer if you'd asked me this question. I still think there's stuff that he has to show, but what he did against Michigan was pro stuff. The way he manipulated the pocket, the way he stepped up instead of trying to escape out the side or out the back or actually backtracking, which is a big no-no. Just that taking 2 steps to the side and then stepping up. And then, you'll notice the other part of that that's really important is that his eyes were always downfield. And last year and the year before, when Quinn would get pressured, he drops his eyes and he looks around for somewhere to maneuver or run. Quinn just sensed and felt pressure. He trusted the offensive line, which is a really big part. So when a team has really good defensive linemen and they want to penetrate, as an offensive lineman, if you're good enough, you can say, oh, you want to penetrate? Let's go. And you actually escort the guy and then screen him off, and he can't stop his own momentum, right? And what Quinn you have to trust Quinn will see that and understand that he needs to step up past that, right? And at the same time as Quinn, you have to trust your offensive lineman that the guy that's penetrating, you still have your hands on him and you're going to seal him. You're not just going to let him penetrate, ragdoll you, and then hit Quinn from behind and strip fumble him. So there's a lot of trust that goes into that. Quinn obviously has it. And the fact that he kept his eyes downfield, you saw that on the Gunnar Helm touchdown throw. By the way, that Cam Williams holding was complete BS. That's nonsense. That hands inside, I mean, that happens on every play. And, I thought the officials tried to put their fingers on the scale a couple of times in that game, and they weren't successful. Texas just sort of was undeniable and just kept being a buzzsaw. But the three motion penalties on Cam Williams, obviously we can't do that. Obviously, you really can't do that against a good defense. We'll get away with that against Louisiana and Monroe probably and Mississippi State. But look, it's an inexperienced guy in a stadium. He's full of adrenaline. He's a bigger guy, so he's concerned about getting a good drop and not letting the guy get around him and just and evade him. Because Cam knows, if I can get my hands on someone, the play's over. But if they can run around me, so he's got to get a good get off, just like that defensive end has to get a good get off. So he's hypersensitive to that, and he's trying to move quick and be fast in his drop. So it'll get cleaned up. And I don't want people to blame it on the offensive line collectively. It was one guy. Last week, it was one guy, Jake Majors, with a couple of dumb penalties. On the whole, this group's played really well and really clean.
I think last thing before we get out of here, thank you for the super chat, Texas Beats. How are we feeling about the Georgia matchup? Obviously, this has gotten a lot of buzz today because Georgia's number 1. Texas moved up to number 2 in the AP poll. Very, very fine margin ahead of Ohio State. I think Ohio State even has more first place votes. But I mean, feeling excited, obviously. I can't wait for this one, but I think you have to consider 2 of Georgia's toughest tests, for as good as they are upcoming, and they are going to be in back-to-back weeks. They go to Kentucky, which not going to be a tough test, but they go to Tuscaloosa, and then they play Auburn. And they get Auburn at home, but that's still an Auburn team that we have seen is extremely volatile. They can put up 70 or they can lose to Cal. Similar applies to Texas. They have 2 pretty manageable teams with UTSA and ULM upcoming. Mississippi State, I fear less now after seeing what Arizona State did, but Oklahoma is Oklahoma. The Red River Shootout's a Red River Shootout. You got to get there first. But I think you and I and everybody in Austin would be over the moon if on October 19th there's a 1 versus 2 matchup the same weekend as 100,000 people coming into town or 200,000 people coming into town for the F1 weekend.
So Texas Beats, to answer your question, how are we feeling about the Georgia matchup? Much better.
I have to agree with that as well after seeing what the Longhorns did in Ann Arbor. So thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you head to Inside Texas today for the best Texas Longhorns football scoop. And make sure you come and see us tomorrow. We will be live again in the morning to talk Michigan and more. Thank you for watching. Paul, thank you. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.